I will go over installing MySQL on Windows 10. MySQL is a database product that's used to store data in databases, and within those databases, there are tables which you can use to insert, update, retrieve, and delete information. Now, the way I'll go about installing it is that they provide an automated installer that does a lot of stuff for you. I won't be choosing that route, but instead I'll be extracting it from a zip archive and configuring it manually. And part of that is to go over some of the problems and how to work around them that people encounter. And it's going to take more time to do, but you should get more information out of it when I go about doing it this way. The first step is to go to dev.mysql.com. Click on Downloads. Scroll down to MySQL Community Edition and click on the Community Downloads link. Choose MySQL Community Server. Scroll down and you'll see that MySQL installer for Windows, which will do a lot of the things for you. We won't be doing that today. I'm running the 64-bit version of Windows 10, so I would choose the Windows x86 64-bit zip archive. If you're running the 32-bit version of Windows, you would choose the 32-bit version. So depending on what type of operating system that you're running, you would click on the appropriate download link. Click on the no thanks, just start my download. And it will begin downloading it and saving it to your downloads folder. I have already downloaded it. So you'll locate where it saved the zip file and right click on the zip file and choose extract all. I will extract it to my C drive. I'll type in C:\/ and click extract. After it's finished extracting, browse to your C drive, rename the MySQL dash and the version number to have it just say MySQL. And to do that, right click on the folder, choose rename, and I'll get rid of this extra information so that it just says MySQL. Now in the lower left-hand corner of the screen is the Windows icon. Click on that, and where it says Ask Me Anything, type in command. Click on Command Prompt. I will change the directory to MySQL, change the directory to bin. This is where the binary files are stored. And the server is mysqld.exe. And what I'll do first is just try running the server and see what happens. Type in mysqld and press enter. And what should happen is that you'll press enter and it should just keep running. But as you can see, it says it just stops with an error message, and it says I'm just looking for the lines that have the word error in it, and it says failed to set data directory to MySQL data. When I look in my MySQL directory, it has a bin folder, a docs folder, and an include folder, but there's no data folder. Right click somewhere on an empty space in the File Explorer window, choose new folder, and set the name to data and press enter. So we'll try running it a second time. Now, this Windows Firewall says it blocks some features of this app, so I'll need to give it access to run MySQL and accept incoming connections. And I'll just choose it to allow communications from private networks and uncheck the one where it says public networks. Click on Allow Access. And I'll try running it once again. And this time it didn't display any errors, but it still just kind of returned the command line. And the expected behavior is, since this is a server, it should always be running. It's a database server. So to see what errors it's outputting, I need to type -- then the word console. And when I run it this time, it gives me more information about what's happening. And I'm, again, looking for anything that says error. And the first one I see is says it can't open a MySQL plugin table. And then there's another error that says can't open and lock privilege tables. Table MySQL user does not exist. So I've created the data folder. Let's take a look what's in the data folder. And we see that there's this IDB data 1, and that's where the actual database is at. And there are no tables in that database. So what we need to do is initialize the database. And we need to find out the command to do that. I ran the wrong command. Let's try this again. MySQL D --. And to get actually help from the server, I have to do -- verbose -- help. And when I do this, it will give me pages upon pages of information. I'll retype that command, but redirect it to a help file so I can read it. So I'll type in > and then help.txt. So in my file explorer, I can read the help file and see a list of valid commands to run. And since the tables aren't set up in the database, I need to initialize the database. So I'll look for the word int. And I see a word, an option that says initialize, and it says create the default database and exit. Create a super user with a random expired password and store it into the log. So I'll try running MySQL D, and I'll still write errors out to the console because I want to see what's happening. And I'll include the initialize command. And this time I get an error saying initialize was specified, but the data directory has files in it. Because I tried running the database server without an initialized database. Go to the data folder, and this time I'll delete all of these files. And we'll try running it again. So now this time I don't see any errors. I see warnings, and it leaves me a note with a temporary password that has been generated for this root user. That's the administrator account to the local MySQL database that I have running on my machine. It usually writes it out to the error log, but since I put the console command on the command line, it did not write it out. So I'm just going to do this over again just for completeness. And then instead I'll leave the console command out of it just to show you what happens. So looking out in the data folder, I see a file with .err. That's the error log. Let me open up another instance of Notepad. And when I view the data of that error log file, it also has the temporary password that it's generated for the root account. So we're on the right track. Now the MySQL database server at this point is not running because the initialize command, it will set up the database, set the password, and then exit. So we'll need to run it one more time with I'm just going to do the console just to output anything that's going on and seeing if there are any errors, which there are not. And this time it did not take me to the command prompt. So that means that everything is running fine. And I'll open a second command prompt, browse to the MySQL binary directory, and they have a MySQL client that you can use to connect to. And it's just called MySQL without the D. D stands for daemon, which is a fancy word for server. And the parameters I'll pass in is the username I'll log in as, and I'll do -u and space, followed by the user account I want to use, and that's root, and then a -p to indicate that I need to type in a password. And it's prompting me for that password. And I'll just copy the password and paste it. And I'm in. Now, one thing you'll notice is that if you try to run any MySQL commands to see what databases that are available, it'll tell me that I must reset my password. It won't let me do anything until I reset my password. And there's one of two ways you can do it. The first way is if you know what the password is and you're in, you can type alter user and type in the account that you want to reset. And it has to be in a single quote followed by the account name. For the super administrative account, it's root. And I'll do @ and then I need to specify a host, which is, you can kind of think of it as like the server name where they're connecting from. And this would be localhost. Then you would need to set the password. And the way you do that is that you type in identified by, and then you would specify the new password that you want to use. For example, I'll use QBboard. You'll need to end it with a semicolon. If you don't, you'll press enter and you'll see a little arrow. So eventually you need to type in a semicolon and press enter, and it says OK. So to exit out and to see if this actually worked, I'll type in quit and then try login as root with the new password. And so we're in. Now, another way of changing the password, and this usually happens when you try to sign in and you can't get in, the way you do that is you create a temporary file to reset the password. And I'll just type in notepad reset.sql, and I'll create a new file. And I'll type in that alter statement again, alter user root at localhost identified by, I'll just call it test123 this time, and end it with a semicolon. Save the file, exit. I'll need to stop the MySQL server, so I need to go back to the command prompt window that's running the database server, and I'll press Control and the letter C, and it will shut down. If it doesn't shut down, you can try pressing Control C again, and if that doesn't work, open up a another command prompt window, which I have two of them. And what you would do is you would type in Task Manager. And you'd have to locate a background process that says MySQL D, right click, choose End Task. And that's another way you can stop the server from running. So I want to have it run that command to reset the root password because I've forgotten what it is. And the way you do that is you type in MySQL D, and I'll enable console logging just to see if there's anything going on. --init-file equals, and then I'll give it the file name containing the SQL commands that I want to run. And press enter. And let me see if there's anything that says something about an error. And it says MySQL file reset.sql not found. No such file or directory. Now, as you can see, that the reset file is definitely here. And you can even try it by feeding it an absolute path. And that actually worked. It says execution of init file started, execution of init file ended. So giving an absolute path in this situation worked. Now, another thing, if you just want to run it using a relative path and just say reset.mysql, what actually happens is that because MySQL instructions just to reset the root password is located in the bin directory. If you want to run it using a relative path without the absolute directory in there, you would actually have to move it to the data directory. And in this situation, it was able to find the file this time. So the server is up and running. It's almost good to go. There's this kind of warning thing that I'll take care of. So we're kind of almost set up. We still need to create databases and stuff. So I'll stop the database server and go to MySQL, and this is the default MySQL configuration file. I'll make a copy of it, and to do that, right click on the file, choose copy, right click, choose paste, and I'll rename the configuration just to say my, that's M-Y. And the file is actually called my.ini. And that's the configuration file for MySQL. If you try to change the default one, it'll keep overwriting it. So you'll need to make a copy of it and then just change this particular file. I'll edit the my configuration file just to take care of some of these errors. And the first error it said was that there was, this is telling me to use this explicit defaults timestamp server option. So I'll highlight this option, paste it into the bottom of my configuration file. And I'll set it equal to 1, which will enable that option. Save the file. And I'll try running the server again. There's some more warnings. It's complaining about SQL modes, and it's referring to this line. So to make these warnings go away, I'll copy these parameters that it's warning me about. Copy them. Then add a comma to the end of the value for SQL mode and paste that information in. And I'll need to get rid of the single quote marks and the letter and. And there's one more option, no create user. I'll copy this and paste it into my INI file. Save the INI file. I'll stop the server by pressing Control-C, run it again. And now this time all the warnings have gone away. So pretty much at this point, all I need to do is, well, one thing I want to do is install it as a Windows service. So when it comes time for me to reboot my PC, MySQL will automatically start. So I'll press Control-C. I'll need to refer to the help file that I created. And some of the first options that it gives you is an install command. It says install the default service. And it's configured to start up automatically. So to install it as a Windows service, type in MySQL D space -- install. Now I get an error saying install/remove of the service denied. I need to run this as an administrator. And to do that, you click on the start icon and type in command. Instead of left clicking on command prompt, I'll right click on it, choose run as administrator. Choose yes to give it permission. Change back to the MySQL bin directory. And I'll try running MySQL D space -- install. Now I get a message that says service successfully installed. Now I could click on Ask Me Anything and type in services. Click on services. Look for MySQL. And the startup type is set to be automatic, but it's not running right now. So to have it run right now, you right click on it, choose start. And now it's running. I actually want to cover one more error, just one more. that I'm finished. So if I try running MySQL D from the command line right now, you'll get an error saying that this IB data1 file must be writable. And that's referring to the database file in the MySQL data directory. This is where all the database information is stored. And the problem is that there's already a database server running and it already has a lock on that file. And you can tell because there is a file that ends in .pid, and that stands for process ID. That's actually the MySQL program ID that's currently running. And that's what this error message usually means, is that there is another MySQL database server already running and you're trying to run a second one, but only one can run at one time. So let's go ahead and create a database. And to do that, we need to launch the MySQL client and type in MySQL space -u root -p, and you'll type in your password. You create a database with the create database command, and you need to pick a name for the database. So I'll call it work. Now, typically it will default to I guess, a kind of more generic character set if you want to set it up to understand international characters, which is UTF-8. You'd have to type in default character set UTF-8 default collate UTF underscore general underscore CI, end it with a semicolon. And if you make a mistake, you can press the up arrow and correct it. It's actually collate UTF-8 underscore general underscore CI. And to display the databases, you type in show databases, and we see that we have our work database. And to switch to that database, I can type in use work, and to list the tables in that database, which it doesn't have any right now, you type in show tables. Now, to create a second user and give that user access to that database, you'd use the first step is to create that person. And to do that, type in create user. Then in single quotation marks, you type in the name of that person, and then where they're coming from. And if I want to restrict them just to they only can connect from my local development machine, I would use localhost. And then I would specify their password with identified by, and then I would type in my password here. And you can pick a more original password than what I've created. End it with a semicolon. And now we have a user Joe that I can try logging in with. I'll just copy this password and paste it. And now I'm in, but the problem is that Joe doesn't really have access to do anything. And to give him access to, like, for example, if I try to use database work, Joe does not have access. So let's give Joe access. And the way you do that is with the grant command. And I'll be generous and give Joe access to do anything. Create records, create tables, modify tables, delete records, query records in the work database. And I'll do grant all on, and then give it the database name. Followed by a period, and here you would list the table that you would give them access to, but I want to give them access to all tables that I'll create in the work database. So I'll put in an asterisk or a star, and I would say who I would grant access to the work database to, and put in the word to, and then in single quotation marks, you would type in the username and the host. End it with a semicolon, press enter. And so you think, well, that would work. So now I should be able to use database work, and it still says access denied. Now, what turns out what was happening is I was using the wrong database command to change databases. I was using use database work when I should have left out the word database. So I was trying to actually change to a database named database. So we're going to try this one more time with, instead of use database work, I'll use work instead. And now this time it actually does. I'm actually able to get in, and that's just using the grant all command. Now, if you want to add MySQL to your path, so you can just open up a command prompt and type in MySQL without having changing to the directory all the time. You just search for the word path, click on Edit System Environment Variables. Choose Environment Variables. I'll adjust the system variable path by clicking on Path and click on Edit. Click on the New button and I'll type in C:\mysql bin and click OK. Now this time when I open the command prompt, and if I want to access it, I can just type in MySQL -u from anywhere, and I can access the client that way. So that's it for this video. And of course, if I can select the correct database, thanks for watching.